Hi everyone, I'm Debbie Damen and I'm a postdoc researcher at Tilburg University, and in this video I'm going to present the paper Lifting the Curse of Knowing, How Feedback Improves Readers' Perspective Taking. We were very honored to receive the Best Paper Award, so I'm hoping that this presentation will also do justice to that award. The study that I'm presenting today was part of my PhD dissertation, investigating how we can help people to really assess what other people think, feel, and know, how we can help people to become good perspective takers. Now, before I'm going to tell you more about the study, I want to tell you a story, and afterwards I have a question for you to answer. So imagine that you're reading a story about Tom, and that Tom is on his way to his first ballroom dancing class. And on his way over, he meets his friend Eileen, and upon hearing that he's going to attend the lesson, she excitedly replies that she also thought of joining, but that she can't make it to tonight's lesson. So instead, she asks Tom to call her when he gets back and to let her know whether he enjoyed it. Well, Tom attends his lesson, but he doesn't like it. He doesn't like the instructor who takes the entire time taking attendance and filling out lengthy questionnaires. Tom didn't even have time to practice. So on his way home, he tries to call Eileen, but he doesn't get a hold of her, so he leaves her the following voicemail.
Eileen, this is Tom. I hope you enjoyed your dinner. About that ballroom dancing class. Judging from tonight's class, I can't think of a better way to spend my Tuesday evenings. Anyways, give me back a call and I'll fill you in on the details. Later.
Now I have a question for you. How did Eileen interpret Tom's message? Try to pick a number, ranging from definitely as sincere to definitely as sarcastic. Do you already have a number in mind? Well, I'm assuming that you thought that Tom meant his message to sound sarcastic. I'm thinking that you perceived this message to sound sarcastic to some extent. And I am also assuming that you thought that Eileen would also perceive some sarcasm. So I'm going to assume that you picked a number higher than 1. Well, if you did, then you did not take Eileen's perspective into account. Well, unlike you, Eileen doesn't know what happened during the dance lesson. She doesn't know whether Tom enjoyed it or not. So she doesn't have any ground to believe that he meant this comment to sound sarcastic. Well, if you thought that Eileen would perceive some sarcasm, you used your own interpretation of Tom's voicemail to assess her perspective. In this sense, your own perception of Tom's sarcasm cursed or biased your ability to assess Eileen's perspective, who is less informed than you. And this constitutes the curse of knowledge effect. Now, why do we fall prone to this curse of knowledge effect? Well, one theoretical account claims that when we try to take people's perspective into account, we follow a certain two-step process. First, we anchor our decision on knowledge that's accessible and therefore salient to ourselves, which is our own perspective. Then, subsequently, we do realize that people are different and that people are not alike, so we try to accommodate for these perspective differences. However, these adjustments are often insufficient because our own knowledge is very accessible and therefore very salient, so we stop adjusting too soon. In this sense, every judgment that we make is biased to our own self-perspective. So in my dissertation, I investigated whether we could help people to adjust sufficiently. In a related study, we argued that if the accessibility and hence saliency of your own knowledge biases your ability to take a perspective of someone who is less informed than you, then highlighting this person's perspective, her knowledge and attentional status should help you to debias your judgment. So in the case of the ballroom dancing class scenario, helping you to focus on what kind of information was accessible to Eileen might help you to realize that she has no reason to perceive Tom's sarcasm. Well, the takeaway point from this study is that these explicit focus instructions did not help readers to really assess other people's perspective. readers still overestimated the similarity between their own point of view and that of someone who was less informed than them. So if these explicit instructions to focus on Edwards' knowledge state before readers judged Edwards' perspective did not help readers to improve the accuracy of their perspective-taking judgments, we asked, what if we provide them with feedback about their perspective-taking performance? Will they improve the accuracy of their judgments that they make, and will their curse of knowledge also diminish? We investigate our question by replicating our previous study and by extending it with 2 feedback conditions, and also by adding another time measurement, where we asked readers to reassess the Edwards' perspective so that we could check whether they improved their perspective-taking performance. So to explain the design in more detail, readers read stories in which a speaker protagonist, Tom, left an ambiguous voicemail message on the answering machine of his friends. And in that voicemail message, he referred to a past experience. Now, readers only were informed whether Tom referred to a positive or to a negative experience. So in case for the negative experiences, readers could interpret his voicemail to sound sarcastic. Now, remember that only readers were informed about Tom's experience. The addressees who received Tom's voicemail did not have access to this knowledge. So for both positive and negative experiences, they had no reason to assume that Tom meant his comment to sound sarcastic. Immediately after listening to Tom's voicemail message, readers judged the addressee's interpretation of this message. And that constituted readers' first assessment of addressee's perspective. Subsequently, readers in the feedback conditions received feedback about the accuracy of their first assessment. And we also manipulated the extent to how explicit this feedback was. So we allocated readers to either an explicit feedback condition or to an implicit feedback condition, and we compared those 2 conditions to a control condition in which readers did not receive feedback about their perspective-taking performance at time 1. So readers in the explicit feedback condition received explicit feedback about the extent to which their answer on the 7-point scale had been accurate. So if readers, for instance, filled out a 7 on the 7-point scale, so thinking that addressees would definitely perceive Tom's voicemail to sound sarcastic, they were informed that their answer had been completely wrong because the addressee interpreted the voicemail to sound sincere. Now, readers in the implicit feedback condition were not explicitly informed about their perspective-taking performance at time 1. Instead, these readers received a follow-up text that explained the addressee's behavior and her thoughts in response to hearing the speaker's voicemail. In the control condition, readers also received a follow-up text, but that follow-up text did not target any perspective information. So it did not target addressee's perspective nor Tom's perspective. Subsequently, in all 3 conditions, readers rejudged the addressee's interpretation of the speaker's voicemail. Now, we expected that readers in the feedback conditions would improve their perspective-taking performance from time 1 to time 2 more than readers in the control condition. Moreover, we also expected that readers receiving explicit feedback about their perspective-taking performance would outperform those who received this feedback implicitly. So before I'm going to tell you what the results were of this study, it's important to mention here that for the first set of analysis, we only focused on the stories in which the speaker protagonist had a negative experience. Because for those stories, readers could wrongly assume that their perception of the speaker's sarcasm was shared by the addressees who were uninformed about the speaker's experience. So the findings of our first set of analysis showed that there was a main effective condition, a main effective time, and that the main effective time was qualified by a significant interaction with condition, meaning that readers improved their perspective-taking performance more from time 1 to time 2 in the feedback conditions than in the control. Moreover, this improvement apparently did not depend on the type of feedback they received. So regardless of readers receiving explicit or implicit feedback, they improved their perspective-taking performance. Now, we've already seen that readers improve their perspective-taking performance from time 1 to time 2 due to the feedback they received. However, for that set of analysis, we only focused on the stories in which the reader referred to a negative experience, because there, for that set of stories, readers could wrongly assume that their perception of the speaker's sarcasm was shared by the naive adversaries. To know whether readers receiving feedback are less inclined to use their own perception of the speaker's communicative intention to guide their interpretation of the adversary's uptake of the speaker's message, we need to look at their judgment for both the positive and the negative stories. So we expect that readers in the control condition will still overestimate the similarity between their own uptake of the speaker's message and that of the adversary, meaning that when readers know the speaker is referring to a negative experience, they will also assume that adversaries will perceive the speaker's sarcasm more than when readers know the speaker is referring to a positive experience. However, we expect that this difference will diminish in the conditions in which the readers received feedback, because there they might come to realize that their own perspective of the speaker's communicative intention is not shared by adversaries because they don't have access to readers' privileged knowledge. So by comparing readers' judgment of adversaries' perception of the speaker's sarcasm for the stories in which the readers knew the speaker was referring to a positive experience to the stories in which readers knew the speaker was referring to a negative experience, we see that there's still a significant difference in the control condition, in line with the curse of knowledge effect. So here we see that if readers know the speaker is referring to a negative experience, which causes them to interpret the speaker's voice note to sound sarcastic, they also think that adversaries will also perceive the speaker's sarcasm more than when readers know the speaker meant his voice note to sound sincere. Now, contrary to expectations, we still see a significant difference in the explicit feedback condition, but not in the implicit feedback condition. So apparently, the curse of knowledge effect, even though it's more moderate, is still apparent in the explicit feedback condition, but not in the implicit feedback condition, meaning that only in the implicit feedback condition, readers were not more likely to use their own perception of the speaker's communicative intention to guide their interpretation of adversaries' perspective. So to sum up, the most important findings of this study is that we've seen that speakers improve their perspective-taking performance after receiving feedback. But more importantly, their curse of knowledge effect is only diminished after they receive adversaries' uptake of the speaker's voicemail. So if they read adversaries' behavioral response to receiving the speaker's voicemail. So what do these findings imply? Well, apparently it's very hard to not let our own perceptions guide our interpretation of someone else's perspective. It's very hard to adjust away from our own knowledge, our own self-perspective, and we need more than explicit nudges to do so. Otherwise, we're very inclined to overestimate the similarity between our own interpretation and that of others who are less informed than we are. More importantly, apparently we need to receive more reliable information to base our perspective-taking judgments on. So perhaps we need to ask and experience others' perspective rather than just taking it and relying on our own ability to assess what other people think, feel, or know. So this still leaves room for ample future studies. We do not yet know whether this feedback effect also translates to future perspective-taking attempts, nor do we know whether people are inclined to get more reliable information to base their perspective-taking judgments on, and what personal factors like someone's confidence in their own perspective-taking ability play in this process. Now I've highlighted the main points of this study. If you want to know more, I invite you to go to our Open Science Framework page. There you can find our pre-registration, our data, and our materials. Also, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me or to look me up online. Thank you for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of this conference and stay safe.